Well, good morning and welcome to the Match 3 Citizens Advisory Board. We'll call the meeting to order. You have been furnished copies of the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there additions or corrections to the minutes? Shall we approve them?
I move approval.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. You have in your packet item number 3 on our agenda is the revenue and expenditure report, and you have a copy of it in your packet. David, you have comments on it?
I go over them real quick, Mr. Chairman. On the revenue side for the month, there's $8,861,650. For fiscal year, $53,918,432. For total program revenue of $362,803,503. And this is for the period ending December 31st of 2013. On the expenditure side for the month, $1,520,645. For the fiscal year of $12,656,072, and total program expenditures of $42,558,934.
Are there any questions? I had asked David a question before the meeting. Looking at the revenue for the month was $8,700,000, and it showed that to be below target. And I had been thinking from the outset that our monthly target was $8.3 million. And so I asked David if he would explain that to me. So I'm going to ask him to explain it to everyone.
Well, in simple explanation here, that the original MAPS allocations were projected out years ago, and each year the Budget and Finance Office does a new prediction and what they think is going to be collected. And that's what you see as far as the number you're talking about. But as far as the original prediction on collections, we are ahead of that.
So the 5.3 indicates that we are ahead of projections on the revenue, even though we're slightly below for the month, but the number is bigger than we had originally projected per month. I wanted to make sure we were all understanding that. Any questions? Any questions about that? I believe it's separated into months. I'd have to find that out for you, but I think that it's probably an even distribution. Yeah, my finance guy says that's the case. Okay. Well, with that explanation, shall we receive the report? Been moved and seconded that we receive the revenue and expenditure report. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The report is received. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda. David?
Item 4 is recommend approval of draft final plans and specifications to be advertised for bids for the MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 3 Whitewater Facility, and authorizing the city clerk to advertise for bids to be received on April 10th, 2014, project M3-R004. These are draft plans. They're approximately 99% complete. There's a few things that we need to finish on them, just kind of wrap up. But we didn't want to wait a whole another month to get these approved just for a couple of little things. But we have a presentation here today by Rand Elliott, who is part of the S2O team. So I'd like to invite him to the podium to talk to you about it.
Welcome, Rand.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Rand Elliott, architect. First off, thanks for allowing us to be a part of this team. It's just been a terrific experience, and for all of us watching the Olympics, we can kind of get that Olympic spirit and what this is going to mean to us as a community as we go forward. So we're excited to be a part of that. I thought we would just go through most of these images I think you've seen before, but certainly we are here to answer questions. I have with me Mike Mays, who's the project architect, and Scott Shipley, Jeffrey Guston. Our entire team is thankful to be a part of this project. Just to kind of give you a sense, this is looking east, obviously, and we're kind of just above the parking lot To the right, the main building in the foreground is the main building, and you'll see a plan here in a moment that shows the fact that it is offices, restrooms, restaurant, and so forth. The triangular building just above that is called the orientation building, and the idea is that you come with your family or whatever the case might be, and you go there for some instruction before you get on the water. And then you get into the raft at that particular location. You can kind of see them up against the edge of the water, if you will. That's called the lower pond in that particular area. And then in the distance, you see a little peaked-shaped building, and it's our kayak storage building. And we have actually used this building to create an iconic element that gives some visibility from the highway. And so it's very important. We've lighted it and some things so that when you go down the highway, you know that there's something special going on in this location. And then, of course, you see, in essence, the river on the right, the main what's called the lower pond. It goes up to the upper pond, and then you go down one of two channels or two experiences for your experience. So next slide is, these are simply drawings that represent what we're doing. David had the opportunity to go and see and be a part of an actual mock-up in Colorado to see how it actually works, and you may want to talk to that a few minutes as well. But you can see in plan, again, the river's on the bottom. The main building is the little triangle to the left, and then it goes up to the upper part. And people have asked, how does the water work? Well, it's gravity feed. It gets up to that higher area, is pumped up to a higher level, and then it gravity feeds to create the experience, really traveling from east to west. And then this is more of a close-up as much as anything. The main building is this diamond-shaped structure in the middle. The darkened line that goes through is a very important part of the project in the sense that, like many facilities, what you would like to do, in particular, it relates to museums and so forth. You want people to come by. You want them to see the food and see the retail opportunities and that sort of thing, both coming and going. And so we're really trying to encourage people to buy a T-shirt and have a hamburger and so forth and so on. But you go through that, you come out here, if you will, on the south side, and then the orientation building is the little section to the lower right. This will be a really exciting opportunity, not only when you come in as a visitor to see all the activity. This is where kind of the fancy kayaking and trick kayaking can go on, and it'll really give you a wonderful, nice, impactful view of what's about to happen as you come into the site. This is a view from the island, in essence. We have a really cool island out in the middle of the water feature that allows you to travel to that point. You can actually see two different locations for seeing the boats go by, if you will, and the main building is off there in the distance. And you can see peeking above the roof line, that's the existing ropes course and the zip line, and you probably know, and if you don't, the zip line installation is going to start here in just a few weeks, and so that's an exciting addition. To the left is the orientation building that you see, so that you have opportunities to share with people how to manage and how to enjoy this experience. This is a very important drawing. I think we shared with you that we had gone to Charlotte to see the other whitewater facility that Scott Shipley had done and with a different team. But one of the things that we discovered there and had the opportunity to experience was the fact that we didn't think there were enough trees, and primarily for shade. And we came back and decided that the location of Oklahoma City, we really need trees, we really need shade, we really need wind breaks and that sort of thing. And so our plan, and planting plan in particular, is very dense, and on purpose, you have the opportunity to actually kind of travel from a shaded area through some sun to another shaded area and so forth all the way around. So for those that come to just enjoy it as a visitor, you have the opportunity to be in the shade as much as you want, or the opportunity to be out in the sun as you see fit. So we think it's a great improvement. We think this will be the finest whitewater facility in the country. Along the bottom, these little drawings represent lighting, how we're proposing to do that. It's tree lighting as well as some pathway lighting as well. This gives you one example of a bridge that goes across from the main entry building off to the north. Wonderful opportunity to watch the activities and so forth. These will be viewing locations as well as bridges that allow you to manipulate over and around. Over on the right, you see a kayak person. In fact, Tom, that may be you over there in that kayak going under the bridge. So the main building is back there in the background, and then you see the lighting elements for the river itself. Just a quick idea about the plan. Mike, you want to point to the right? Does it have a? Does the little button on top give you a red line? No. Oh, yeah, there we go. I'm sorry. On the right, the lower right, the restaurant is along this section. You'd have a wonderful view out to the river, and in fact, the river is kind of perpendicular to the pointed nose of the building. The kitchen area is where the cursor is right now. We have a very interesting way that we've proposed and has been accepted by Mike and the group about how we would do food service. We all know how popular the river is for weddings and parties and all kinds of things. And so we're doing two things. One is this dining room space, and then we've got what's called a grab-and-go idea. And the idea with this is that often families with young children and stuff, you can't get the kids to sit still long enough to really have food. And so you can come in, order a burger, and take it with you, and you can go out onto the site and sit under a tree and have lunch or whatever the case might be. So we're really trying to make sure that we've got opportunities there. We have a large restroom area. There'll be lots of use for that particular facility. It's been designed to be very, very durable. And then above that is the retail side. Again, a very important part of any activity like this. And you can buy a kayak, you can buy a T-shirt, you can have your picture taken. We can do all of those kinds of things. And then the lower left is really the entry, the dock area and storage areas, and then we have offices really towards the center of the building. Next. These elevations just represent the idea that, as everyone knows, there's a certain vocabulary in the Boathouse District in terms of how the buildings are designed. We're trying to create a consistency with them architecturally so that they really fit as a cohesive location. And this particular building will fit as well. The exterior skin is a little bit different. It has a rippled metal panel finish, and it is reminiscent of the ripples that you get in a whitewater facility. So we think it will be a really nice touch as far as that's concerned. We also have an outdoor seating area that is covered as well. Next. We'll come back and talk about schedule in a second. And then another view, this is another bridge view. You can get a sense of what it looks like looking across the Whitewater Channel here, again, back towards the west side of the site. Currently, just to kind of round out the discussion here, currently the plan is to bid the project on April the 10th of this year, and we're on track to do that. As David said, we're very close. We're what we would consider 100% finished, but there are some tweaks to be done, and we're happy to work on that and get that done and ready to go. One interesting thing that we've done is that, and I think this is a terrific idea, working with the city, there will be one of the alternates is the opportunity to complete the building ahead of schedule. And there are alternates to outline that kind of thing and could be a really good thing for the project. Mike is trying to plan and schedule events on the Oklahoma River, and if a contractor felt comfortable about that, then we would certainly encourage them to do so. So I'm happy to, and what I was getting ready to say is that the plan right now is that the projected completion date is 8/28/15. There are opportunities to do a 30, 60, or 90-day schedule ahead of that. Could be as early as May of 2015 as well. So we're really excited about this, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Resolving those litigations going to impact the plan for start?
Well, it could, but right now, all but one of the property owners has gone through the court proceedings, just hasn't actually become our property yet, so technically that's why we've left it red. We have one property owner who we hope to get a judgment sometime next week. Yeah, there is potential for this to slow this down. But we want to have the plans ready, and we want to be moving forward. It's easier for us just to stop this than to pick it up and keep it going. So, yeah, that's something that we're looking at and having to deal with.
One of the other things I might mention that I want to say to David and his staff and his recommendations was to do what's called a pre-bid process in an effort to encourage contractors to participate in the project. The city chose to do a pre-bid, which is kind of an unusual thing, and we had a huge turnout. And we think that it will encourage contractors to be interested in that sort of thing, and that it will be really beneficial for the project.
Rand, we really appreciate all that you've done for our city on the river and elsewhere, and this is it's very exciting to all of us to see how we're moving along with some dispatch here, and we really appreciate the effort you guys are putting into it.
Well, thank you very much, and Tom, I think everybody's looking forward to seeing you in a kayak on the Whitewater facility. Thanks very much.
The one in the rendering, the person in the rendering has hair, so we're pretty sure it wasn't me.
No, it was a helmet. That was a helmet.
It was a helmet. Then it could have been me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for Rand? Well, we have before us the recommended approval of these plans and specifications. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded that we approve these. I should have added in the beginning, Dee and Michael are not here today, but I did attend the meeting, and I think it's accurate to say that this comes with the recommendation of the River Subcommittee, and I should have added that. So I think it has their unanimous recommendation that we approve this. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Many thanks. Item 5, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5 is recommend resolution approving amendment number 1 to the contract for architectural services with GSB Incorporated for MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center number 1, increase of $933,120, project M3-H002. If you recall, several months ago, we interviewed and contracted with GSB, where they were selected, and then we did a small contract for them to get their consultant on board as we went through the senior wellness issues. And now we're ready to go forward with the design of the first center. So we've done an amendment with their contract to get them on board and start with the design of that senior center. So that's what we have here today.
Michael, any comments from the subcommittee?
No, Tom, other than we did review it yesterday at our subcommittee meeting, get it passed unanimously.
Further question? Shall we approve it? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution approving the amendment to the contract for architectural services. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Let's move to item 6, David.
Thank you. Item 6 is recommend resolution approving the binding term sheet for the lease and management agreement between the City of Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, and Healthy Living and Fitness Incorporated for the MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center number 1 operating partner, project M3-H002A. This is related to the item that we just discussed. And if you recall, we've had a lot of discussion about the operating partner and how that might work. And what we came to realize is that we need to do this in pieces, move in small steps. And this is the first step. And this is what we're calling the binding agreement, binding term sheet that outlines the agreements between the parties. So I'll be glad to answer any other questions.
I wanted to, Amanda made a presentation about this yesterday or was it the day before yesterday, Michael, at the subcommittee?
Yesterday.
Anything about that we need to know from a legal standpoint that you'd want to comment about, Amanda?
No, but if anybody had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them about any of the terms that are included.
Great. Well, while she's there, why don't you stay there for a moment? I'm going to ask Michael if there are any comments from the subcommittee or Gloria, if you all had any comments that you wanted to make about it as we consider this.
Well, as you know, during the meeting yesterday, there was some work concerns regarding the fee and the service, the hours that the facility would do service, but there's a further discussion on the fees, and they want to explain to the rest of the committee how that's.
Sure. This is a binding term sheet, so what we call it is the short form of a contract. Both parties have signed off on it. Well, right now, Healthy Living has signed off on it. If you recommend it, it'll go to City Council for their approval, as well as the trust. So it does require some action from Healthy Living. It's their commitment. They're going to be the partner. It also provides them notice as to what we expect from them in operating this facility and what we expect will show up in the long form. It's in very general terms, and as Ms. Griffin said, there is a provision about the fee. Specifically, it requires that the operator come up with a fee schedule, that they have their basic fee, and that it be a reasonable fee to the users, and that they also include a sliding scale for those parties who have an economic need for a lesser user fee. We've also requested and put in the obligations of the partner during planning and construction that the operators sit down with the other operators who are being proposed. So Healthy Living would sit down with NorthCare to discuss not only the practices and policies that they foresee happening in the building, but to come up with a similar sliding scale. We'd like them, the two partners, to sit down and discuss what they need out of the facility, what they hope to see in the facility, what programs and services they have in the facility, and determine, based upon their business model, what the sliding scale is to be amongst the operating partners. We have not put a definite formula for determining that sliding scale, because at this point in time, there's still too many unknowns in the building. Once we get to the long form, if we find that maybe they're not able to come up with similar sliding scales, we may want to address that in the long form of the contract. And the long form of the contract will come back through this same process of subcommittee and board. Additionally, one more aspect of oversight is that you'll see there's an oversight provision in its binding term sheet. In addition to policy review by the city manager and approval, and quarterly and annually reporting to city manager, the city council, and the trust, the city manager has the ability to review and approve all fee schedules. So if the city manager is looking at the operating partners, whether it be the first two that we're dealing with or all four in the future, and sees a huge discrepancy, he has the ability, or his designee has the ability to ask the operators to once again sit down, or to direct the operators to change something in their schedule, their fee schedule.
Thank you. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, Tom, thank you. Just a couple of thoughts about that following up. You know, one of the struggles that we have is, unlike some of the other senior health and wellness centers that we visited, frankly, where there is public support, city subsidy in those centers, and so it takes fewer dollars to operate, to raise, I should say, because of the public subsidy. Of course, our centers don't have a public subsidy. And so the really challenge that we have, however, I think, is to look at this in a way that we are able to allow for folks who otherwise might not be able to pay the price to attend a private facility, a senior health or wellness center, because they just can't afford those kinds of fees. But we have to be really careful here, because on the other hand, we don't want to build a facility that, in effect, may compete with the private sector and put folks out of business, that use public dollars to build a facility, and then some of these private gyms and workout facilities that may attract some of these same kind of folks. So it's a really balancing act that we're dealing with. And Amanda, and I applaud Amanda for listening to the committee, because it certainly is the consensus of the committee that we have to really take a look at, as Gloria said, for low-income folks who might not otherwise be able to attend. But we have to keep in mind, because there's no city subsidy, it takes money to operate these facilities. So it's a challenge.
Thank you, Michael. David, did you want to add a comment?
I do want to add one thing, that the Exhibit A that's referenced in this binding term sheet was not in your packet, but we've passed those out, so that is part of this document.
Yes, Bob?
Well, there's two issues there. The fee schedule, we specifically wrote in provisions. It basically addresses it in this document, but in the long form of the contract, there'll be provisions about the city manager has approval, and that no fee schedule can be implemented unless the city manager, his designee, approves it. So yes, they would have to comply with what requests the city makes in terms of that fee schedule. We would also have termination clauses in the long form of the agreement, and so those termination clauses would apply in any situation where there was a disagreement about the basic terms and whether or not there's a breach. The programs and services is dealt with on a little bit of a different manner. If you look at the binding term sheet, it provides a section for what the programs and services are to be, and the way that this has been determined is that a list of programs and services, which is Exhibit A, it's a general category of the minimum programs and services that we expect each operator to provide in the facility. You'll notice on Exhibit A that there's a line, and it's blank right now, because at this stage, we don't know what programs and services are going to be necessary since we don't know what the building looks like yet. But in the long form, that will be filled out. And so they're going to commit, the operator is going to commit to provide a minimum amount of programming under each one of those categories. And it'll be based upon negotiations with the operator of what we feel is necessary and what they feel they can provide. They have discretion to determine what specific classes and services meet those broader categorical provisions that are in Exhibit A. So they have some flexibility in that situation. We're not going to dictate specifically that you must provide yoga 5 times a day or what those classes are. We're going to say that you need to provide these types of programs and services. And if they're not meeting those programs and services, those minimum numbers that are negotiated, then we're back to the same situation of a termination and a discussion of whether or not there's a breach.
Yeah.
Bob, the RFP that was put out outlined in some broad areas, as Amanda mentioned. In terms of some areas, I think it's pretty clear. I think everyone understands, and I know for a fact, that both North Care and Healthy Living are looking at a therapy pool and a water element, aquatic element. In terms of things like food, I quite frankly can't recall off the top of my head if there was a discussion that I've had or we've heard recently about that. But there are some broad categories in terms of education, in terms of physical. So I expect there will be some of the things that when most of us think of a senior health and wellness, or a health and wellness center even, that will be there in terms of fitness equipment and that sort of thing. But there is a wide cadre of other kinds of services that were in the RFP, and by looking back at without having in front of me the responses, I know the intent of both of the partners are to have pretty a wide range of array of services. that what you would call Gloria?
Yeah.
And I should mention, Mr. Nealon, that Exhibit A does provide a breakout of what those core programs and core services are that we'll expect them to incorporate in their programming. One thing that will be added is a component that specifically addresses the aquatic elements. Right now, it is included within the physical fitness and related programs, or possibly even some of the medical services, physical therapy type things, but we'll go ahead and break that out as a separate requirement so that it's explicitly clear.
Well,
Bob, getting back to the user fees, just one final point. The other thing that some of us, again, I think was the consensus of the committee, and again, we're going to get more information, but after we get further along down the road, but that there be a sense of, and this document talks about user fees. There was a sense of the many of members of the committee that early on we used the word membership fees. You'll recall that as well. So I still think and hope and frankly anticipate that there will be a core element of services that might very well be included as basic membership fees. But again, getting back to the issue of the operating cost of the facility, there may be some other services that will be offered that will be additional costs because they might go beyond the kind of basic services that we would expect people to be able to have available under a membership.
I had a few questions, if I may.
yes.
I was wondering if this contract will provide flexibility, because right now we envision a senior wellness center operating in a certain way today, but it's unknown. And as things move forward, if the demands of the public show that maybe there's a new category that needs to be created or more hours put into that, how will that be monitored? And is it regulated that it would be monitored?
Right. Well, we felt like this mechanism of the program and services is the most flexible for both the city and the operator because it is a minimum. So we expect that they'll provide more than what is just listed in here, more than the average numbers that are listed in here. And in fact, the binding term sheet states that operator will be expected to offer additional programs and services to be determined based upon the community and user participant needs. So we expect that they are out there and they're talking to their community, their membership, and wanting to know what they want. Having the broad categories allows them to change whatever classes, whatever specific services they'd like to offer based upon the needs of their users. And so we felt that having this broad general and not specifically stating you need to have so many exercise classes, you need to have so many educational computer classes, specifically stating what those programs are, we felt that offered them a lot of flexibility.
Right. And I guess my question is more in that, to put it simply, who's the watchdog? Who on an ongoing basis looks at those facts and information and ensures that the operator is delivering to the public what the needs of the public are?
Right now, the way that the binding term sheet is set up, it's the city manager or his designee to not only review the programs and services, the user fees and its sliding scale, but also the policies and procedures. There's specific policies and procedures that we're going to require of the operator, and they will have to be provided to the city for review. And then lastly, there will be quarterly and annually reporting both to the city manager, the city, and the trust. We anticipate that the annual reporting would be a presentation like many of the other groups that work along with the city in a partnership aspect.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Kim, I want to comment on that as well. Both of the operating partners have proposed, and I don't remember exactly quite the exact term because I think they use different terms. It's sort of a consumer advisory group that represents that they will be heavily involved in the programming and the other aspects of the senior center. And And I've talked about, and the committee has talked about at length, about the importance of having some kind of overall advisory, whatever you might call it, that does what you say, that in fact looks at the data and the information from each individual center so that we can have an opportunity to see what's working and what's not working, and if something is working really well at one and the other, we might think it's appropriate that some of the other clinics or the other facilities, use it, that it's a way to do what you say. And that isn't a part of this, but we have had that discussion, have we not, Amanda, over time? And I hope and expect that that it wasn't a part of this RFP and this agreement.
And just one final question. Is it possible that any of the services delivered at any of these facilities could be covered under Medicaid, Medicare, or personal health insurance?
We would expect that the operator would be able to do that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Councilman White?
Yeah, that was a comment I was going to make. When we see the next one come forward, we're going to see a 180 with regard to the business plan. The business plan for the one that's proposed for Capitol Hill is a self-supporting operation based on their ability to collect funds from Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, whatever. And so you're not going to, I think you're going to be surprised at the difference in what you're going to be talking about, because the NorthCare model is one that they're saying they don't want a fee, they don't need a subsidy, they don't need either that by the public or anybody else. They'll operate this medical side of it at a level that they believe will generate sufficient money to operate the rest of it. So I think when the council perceived that they would be different, I don't think any of us had any idea they would be as dramatically different as the two that you're going to see coming forward, the first two. They're going to be, their business plans are night and day from each other. And I think their mission is going to be different. They're going to be remarkably different. And I'm not saying that one's good and one's bad, but they're different. You're going to be struck by that as you see it come forward, I think.
And each of these facilities won't have a geographic territory. I could be a South Side resident and decide that I want to travel to the one at the far north.
Well, I heard talk yesterday about serving their community, and I suspect that if, with the business model that Healthy Living has, charging a fee is going to be not a problem. That's not going to be a problem. The business model that NorthCare has at Capitol Hill wouldn't work if you have to charge much money for the service.
And that's why we've asked them to get together and work out similar fees and that issue.
But I think if you look at the constituency for the Northwest model and the constituency for the Capitol Hill model, you're going to see a tremendous socioeconomic difference in their ability to pay. So it may be we create one for people that can afford it, and we create another one for people that can't. I mean,
community
that's
need.
that's a hardball way to put it, but it may not be that dramatic. But it's going to be pretty dramatic, it seems to me, when I look at what each of them says they're going to do and how they're going to pay for it.
Community need will certainly drive a lot of the services that are available and how they are addressed. Also, each one of the operators will be able to generate additional income from subleasing and from sponsorships, as well as rentals of space. But certainly the programs will be determined by that particular community's needs. And I believe that there was a commitment from each of the two operators in particular now, where they were going to bring in focus groups to determine the number of hours, the types of services, expanded services that would be available.
But again, I want to reiterate that kind of gets at part of what your question, Kim, and that is, I think that is very, very important, that particularly that we don't have people that, particularly in the low-income community, that can't afford to go to a facility and have to travel to clearly the other side of town because the fees are what they can't afford. Now, I'm talking about low-income folk. I mean, and that's why this sliding fee scale, I think, is so important. That very well that doesn't mean everyone, but those people that really don't have a lot of means, we don't want them having to face the the choice of, I can go to this facility, but I just can't afford it, so I'm going to go clearly on the other side of town. I think that's really important. It is to me, and I know a lot of members.
Just about my lawyer's mind is whirling on this one. Because of the difference in business models, if you have a very different fee structure where somebody in one facility could go basically for free, but somebody going to another facility has to pay a user fee. As the city is involved, do we have any risk down the line that somebody's going to complain that the treatment is inequitable and they ought not to have to pay the fee because somebody going to the other facility gets to go without paying the fee? Has that legal issue been explored?
We have explored that legal issue, and we do not believe it is an issue. And one of the main reasons it's not an issue is because these facilities are open to everyone. So anybody can go to the Capitol Hill. They don't have to live in that area. Anybody can go to the Northwest Quadrant. They don't have to live in that area. They're open for the entire public.
I assumed that was the answer, but I wanted to make sure that somebody had at least contemplated that possibility in this litigious society that we live in. Thank you.
We do have some evidence, though, that they won't be that, the population they're served is not going to be that mobile. I mean, you have little community centers all over Oklahoma City, and very rarely does anybody come very far to attend one. There's one in Woodson Park, and there's one in Will Rogers Park, and I would wager very few people from Southwest 25th Street go to the one in Will Rogers Park. So they're going to be local. I mean, and I'm not sure I 100% agree with the fact that one's free and one's not is totally without problems for that very reason, because I don't think they're going to. The mobility question is a whole different matter. I think whether the free one is close to you or the expensive one is close to you, and the other one is far from. I mean, I think that's something we have to think about. But it's going to get down to business models. I mean, it's going to get down to it can't be done one way without user fees. There just is no way it can work. I mean, there's no other source of revenue that's going to be a steady enough stream of income to make it work. So,
Further discussion? Well, I want to say to the subcommittee and to the staff, both David and Amanda and everyone that's worked on it, of all the projects involved in MAPS 3, we started here with a blank sheet of paper more than on any other thing we've done. And we've had the travails of trying to locate community partners, and we've had to retrace our steps several times, and I want to commend you for your tenacity and your flexibility. The discussion around the table indicates that there are some real concerns that have to be addressed, and I congratulate the subcommittee and the staff and the legal staff for helping us get sorted and bring us to this point today, which I think is a very important point of demarcation for us to step forward with these senior wellness centers, and I wholeheartedly recommend what the subcommittee has brought forward today. Is there further discussion, further comments? All right. Is there a motion to approve?
I'd like to make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we approve the resolution approving the binding term sheet. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Thank you. Item 7, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 7 is recommend resolution waiving the procedures for selection of architects, engineers, and planners for the Phase 2 improvements and approving Amendment Number 2 to contract for landscape architectural services with Hargraves Associates for the MAPS 3 Downtown Public Park Master Plan Development in Phase 1 and Phase 2 improvements project, increase of $6,101,550, project M3-P006. The reason why you see the first line on there that says recommend waiving the procedures for the selection of architects, engineers, and planners for the Phase 2 improvements is because the original advertisement for the architecture and engineering services said master plan and Phase 1. And if you recall, Phase 1 is a very small piece of the upper part. We felt like because of the timing, because of design issues, and we just felt like it was better for us to amend their contract to go ahead and do Phase 1 and 2 of the Upper Park. So that's why there's the waiver procedures. So this is the architectural contract for the final plans for the actual design of the Upper Park, both Phases 1 and 2. There will be a preliminary report phase that will come to this body, and at that point, we can decide whether we go with just Phase 1 or Phase 1 and Phase 2 design all at once. So there's still more opportunities to make those decisions with the park.
Kimberly, does the subcommittee have some comments that we ought to hear?
Well, definitely this went through our subcommittee meeting yesterday with some spirited discussion. And resounding, we totally agree with the premise that we should be working with the same architects and engineers, quite frankly, throughout the whole project for continuity and accountability and just all the parameters that make for a really well-made project. Certainly what did come up yesterday was actually the dollar amount of fees, which it's a large project with a huge amount of detail, which also mean it comes with a great price tag for getting a world-class park. And after we went over the original budgets, talked about the fact that this is even under what was originally budgeted, although they're big dollars. I think part of it is not any of us are used to pulling out a checkbook and writing these personally, so they feel really big. But in good stewardship of the money, I believe that we're all in consensus that this is a good plan to move forward. It did pass yesterday at the Park Subcommittee. We're happy to present it to you today.
Are there questions? Further discussion? Anything buzzing your legal mind, Bob, that we need to... Anyone else?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the resolution before us.
Is there a second? Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution that is before us under item 7. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. It brings us to item 8. David, do we have any new business to consider today?
We do not.
Item 9, the subcommittee reports. I'm sure David's going to include some of these in his report as well. Does any subcommittee, Trails and Sidewalks, have a... Okay. And let's see, the transit met, and Zane, you want to...
Yes, thank you. Since Nathaniel's not here, we received a report yesterday from Jacobs on the progress that they're making on preliminary designs and discussions for cars and rail. It was a very good presentation. Actually, they showed us that we've had 13, I believe it was, contractors who have replied to letter of intent and covered a variety of different car designs and propulsion modes. It was very exciting to see that there were that many people interested. The proposals came from across the United States and across the world. We had several from Europe, several from Asia, several from the United States, so it looked very promising. Spirited discussion on the propulsion types and whether or not we're going to have catenary wires or not, and what the original recommendation was for a streetcar versus as far as pertaining to catenary wires or not. Let's see, we also had a presentation by Mr. Eric Winger on the success of the intermodal hub, and I think you were all aware of last week that we had an open house. It was very well attended, and it's a great opening. So that's all I've got.
Great. Any questions for Zane? Any other subcommittee need to make a report? I'll just say that all the subcommittees, even though they're not reporting, there's a lot of staff work going on behind the scenes, and we expect to hear from committees we didn't hear from, subcommittees we didn't hear from today in the future. And that takes us to the informational items. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in your packet the map that we briefly discussed during the item for the plans for the Whitewater facility. And as I said, a lot of those properties are in various phases of litigation. We have just really one that we're still waiting on a judgment on. Karen, go ahead and go to the next trails. And then we have the map for the trails, and you can see on this northern part of the river trails, we have just one parcel that we still have some technical issues with, but we're very close to wrapping that completely up. Karen, go to the next one. And then the southern half of the river trail also, same kind of thing. It seems like on these two parcels, once we get where we think we're ready to wrap it up, something else technical comes up, either a title issue or something. So we're still working on those, and we expect those to be cleared up here pretty soon. Then also you have information in the agenda on two of the properties that were within the Whitewater facility, the SWATEC property and the McNeil Trust property is items D and E, and then item F is some right-of-way in the convention center area.
Okay, any questions about any of the informational items? David, you want to then move us to item 11? Any items that we haven't talked about that you want to elaborate on?
I can. I tell you a couple things. The river Phase 2 improvements, which is the race course items and some infrastructure, continues. It's under construction right now, and that's why the river is down, but the river is scheduled to come back up this weekend. So if all things go as planned, water will be back in that basin this weekend. And we talked about the partner negotiations with Senior Wellness. Trails and sidewalks, as Ms. Hooper said, there wasn't a meeting this month. That's because we've got a lot of work in the field going on. We've got the Phase 1 sidewalk projects 1 and 2 are both under construction, and I think everybody's seen that work that's going on around town and continues. And then the Phase 2 sidewalks are in design, and we'll soon be bringing those plans to you. And then we have the Phase 3 sidewalks, which was part of the additional money that Council recommended that we use. We are interviewing engineers shortly to get started on that. And as I mentioned during the right-of-way issues on those maps, the Phase 1 trail, Project 1 is under construction, and Project 2 will soon be out for bid. And then the Phase 2 trails, which is the I-44 corridor, are well into design. Convention Center, the conceptual design continues. Coordination with the park and the boulevard continues. Fairgrounds has a lot of work going on. The parking and utilities are under construction, and the design continues on the Expo building. Mr. Boatwright mentioned the streetcar issue, so preliminary design has begun on that. And then we discussed the park. The master plan has been approved, and we'll soon be starting the design of the park. That's all I have.
Wow. Any questions for David?
Just for a quick question on the I-44 corridor, and when they had the presentation on public meeting a while back for the facility and options as to where the trail will go, the decision on that, is that still part of the design?
That's still the ongoing process. They're having to work with a lot of people, get with ODOT, because there were several crossings and several parallel areas along the interstate. And, you know, because it's an interstate, they want to make sure that access is limited. So they're working with them to make sure that we can get across in certain areas. So there's still a lot of work to go on. They have honed it down to basically excluded a few of the options that were shown because of comments or because of issues like that. But it's still an ongoing process.
Any other questions for David? That brings us to item 12. Any comments by the board? Any additional comments by staff, David? Anything else that we need to hear from you about?
No, sir.
Well, this is the opportunity we have for citizens who are here who would like to be heard by the advisory board. Any citizens want to be heard? All right, then that completes the businesses of the day. Would someone like to move we adjourn? It's been moved and seconded we adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you for coming today.